Baik, kita akan teruskan bersama segmen Belanjawan 2024 yang akan dibentang tidak lama lagi pada 13 Oktober 2023, dan izinkan saya berbahasa Inggeris untuk kita teruskan dengan topik kita mengenai e-invoice. As announced during the retabling of the Malaysia's Belanjawan 2023, the Inland Revenue Board IRB introduced the implementation of e-invoicing in phases from 1 June 2024 to 1st January 2027 for targeted taxpayers. The IRB issued an e-invoicing guideline to provide direction on the implementation of e-invoicing and to address the common questions surrounding it. This is a mandatory enforcement for businesses that reach a sales threshold of 100 million per year. 100 million ringgit per year. In fact, many countries, especially from the EU, have introduced e-invoicing to digitalize their tax administration and enhance the effectiveness of the overall compliance risk management. It is introduced in 1965 with the first e-invoice issued through the electronic data interchange in DI. And to understand better, we have our guest ready on the line, Muhammad Haizam Abdul Aziz, Tax Director, PwC Malaysia. I want to say thank you very much, Haizam, for joining us. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you for having me on the program, sir.
All right, we have a lot of e-digital and e-support and everything. This time we're going to be talking about e-invoicing. Maybe Haizam can share with us what is e-invoicing and what type of transactions are covered under the e-invoicing requirements.
Okay, talk about e-invoice. It is actually a digital representation of the transaction between the seller and the buyer. The intention is to actually replace the traditional hard copy or even the soft copy invoices that are actually being used for the transaction. Now, moving forward, in terms of the e-invoice transmission between the seller and the buyer, everything will be paperless. Okay, so that is the overall intention when we talk about e-invoice. So, however, with regards to the Malaysian Tax Authority, the IRB's implementation plan, at this point in time, because the implementation will, like you correctly mentioned, for the over 100 million ringgit companies, they have to actually implement it by June 2024. So if you look at the timeline, that is actually a short timeline. And at this point in time, what the IRB will require for this first group of companies will be for them to actually transmit the data in relation to the transaction and then get the validation done by the tax authority system, and then they have to actually embed a QR code onto the invoice, which they will continue to send like normal to their buyer. Okay, so that is what they plan to do, at least for the first phase. In terms of the transactions that will be covered, it's going to cover every transaction. When I say every transaction, that means it's going to be business to business, business to government, as well as business to consumers. Of course, for business consumers, there will be some leeway in terms of how you actually handle this validation process.
All right, as you mentioned, the e-invoicing is like transition from traditional soft or hard copy going paperless. Definitely is a good news for businesses to businesses, businesses to government, and even businesses to consumer. And we know that IRB is targeting 4,000 businesses for the first stage of the new electronic invoicing, e-invoice system. How does the introduction of e-invoicing align with the Malaysia's digital agenda?
Okay, so in terms of the e-invoicing, obviously it is intended to support the growth of the digital economy of the country. And if you look at it, the implementation is in line with the 12 Malaysia plan in terms of the, because the focus would be in terms of the digital services infrastructure. And like you correctly pointed out in the beginning of the program is, or the question just now that you were alluding to was, it is going to help the tax administration of our local tax authority to be more efficient. So it is intended to be more transparent and more real time. And then also, if we look at from a taxpayer's perspective, certain data will be pre-populated because the nature of the e-invoicing, the transaction will be captured by the tax authority, and therefore certain information would already be available for them to help you as a taxpayer to pre-populate your income tax returns.
Definitely, this is one of the initiatives to help also boost the digital infrastructure and also help the government policies maker become more efficient and easy to manage. And talking into the Malaysian context, what are the challenges that Malaysian companies are facing in the implementation of e-invoicing?
Okay, so like I mentioned just now, in terms of the first phase, because the implementation is going to be in June 2024, obviously there is a short runway in that sense, right? The first set of guideline was issued at the end of July. The second updated guideline and the specific guideline was only issued last week. So if we talk about the runway that this first group of companies have for the June 2024 implementation is very short. And when we talk about this first group of companies, they are the big corporations, and typically the big corporations tend to take longer time. It's like a big ship, right? For them to turn, it's going to be slower in that sense because of all the internal governance, the controls, the approvals that need to be done internally, and then also from a system standpoint, most of these companies they use actually big ERPs, which also need to take. It's going to take time to actually make changes to the system. Okay, so I think that's one of the the main challenges which we have actually heard from these organizations. Even if we talk about what they call the specification in terms of the transmission of the data from the IT standpoint, the guidelines have not been issued yet. But the IRB is saying that they are hoping that they can release it sometime this month. So again, even if it's released this month, for the companies to actually make changes to the system, it may still take some time.
All right. As you mentioned, big corporation require longer time, including the system also need more time. How about the smaller groups? How does e-invoicing affect the SMEs in Malaysia?
Okay, for the SMEs, because the implementation of e-invoicing will be in phases. So typically for the SMEs, I would say if you look at the definition of the SME Corp, if you look at the revenue, because the implementation will be based on the revenue threshold, and they would fall within, I would say, the 2026 or 2027 bracket. So it's not, for them, they still have time. That one is more from the implementation timeline perspective. But I guess from a system standpoint, the tax authority, to ease the burden of this group of companies, the SMEs, they are actually introducing this My Invoice portal, which is supposed to be free to the SMEs. So in that sense, there will be something which will be available free to the SMEs, so that they don't really need to incur too much cost in that sense. But having said that, of course, you have to see the state of each organization. So some SMEs may already have, the accounting software or the ERP system which they are currently using. So to a certain extent, there may still be some cost. The only thing is maybe perhaps, the integration, how easy or difficult it will be for them.
From the impact to businesses, what can we see on the experience of other economies that have already implemented e-invoicing? What lessons actually can Malaysian businesses learn from those experiences?
I think maybe more from the implementation of the government. I think in terms of, let's say for some countries, I think Australia as an example, I think the feedback that we've gotten from them is the communication or the awareness that needs to be done to the public. So because if you look at e-invoicing, yes, it was announced much earlier, and there was some talks, and even when we talk about the discussion that RB had with MDEC, there was an MOU signed end of last year. But in terms of the awareness to the general public, I think that took some time. To be fair to the RB, they did try to ramp it up earlier this year by having, the engagements with the relevant industries, and then even after the guidelines were issued. But I think the creation of the awareness is critical, and perhaps it could have been done much earlier. Okay, I think that's something which could have been done in that sense.
All right. Other than that, what is your wish list for budget 2024 in relation to e-invoicing? Within 2 minutes, please, Haizam.
Okay, so when we talk about e-invoicing, yes, the guidelines have been issued, but I think the relevant legislation surrounding e-invoicing is not there yet. So of course, my hope is that during this budget, they will make some announcement required from the legislative perspective for e-invoicing, because that will provide a bit more clarity, and also in terms of how these companies will go about implementing e-invoicing. And then the second part, maybe this is something which more for companies that have actually been asking about grants or subsidies to help them in terms of easing the burden to implement e-invoicing.
All right, that is a very great sharing by our guest Muhammad Haizam Abdul Aziz, the Tax Director, PwC Malaysia, for great insights during our segment of Belanjawan 2024 on how onboarding Malaysia to e-invoicing. I want to say thank you very much, and Niaga Awani will be uploading all of this discussion within astroawani.com and all platform digital Astro Awani.